Okay, so we're on day 5, the last day of this first week in our 20-day Genesis reading plan. I've just called this one Talking Rubbish. Hopefully that'll be... Well, it might be obvious 2 times because I've got a huge genealogy and I'm already struggling with words, so let's see how that goes. But we've got the Tower of Babel, which is just a fantastic story. I'm going to read today from that old favourite in, I think, Methodist churches, the Good News Bible. Not so many around actually nowadays, but I always used to see a Good News Bible, and you might really love it. So I've got my misgivings sometimes about the Good News Bible version, but that's fine too. Let's enjoy disagreeing about which Bible version's the best. So we're going to read Genesis 10 and 11 and have a few thoughts about that, and see why everyone was talking rubbish. Chapter 10. These are the descendants of Noah's sons: Shem, Ham and Japheth. These 3 had sons after the flood. The sons of Japheth: Gomer, Magog, Madai, Javan, Tubal, Meshech and Tiras, were ancestors of the people who bear their names. The descendants of Gomer were the people of Ashkenazar, Rippath and Togmarah. The descendants of Javan were the people of Elisha, Spain, Cyprus and Rhodes. They were the ancestors of the people who long ago lived along the coast of the islands. These are the descendants of Japheth, living in their different tribes and countries, each speaking its own language. The sons of Ham: Cush, Egypt, Libya and Canaan were the ancestors of the people who bear their names. The descendants of Cush were the people of Seba, Havilah, Sabtha, Ramah and Sabteka. The descendants of Ramah were the people of Sheba and Dedan. Cush had a son named Nimrod, who became the world's first great conqueror. By the Lord's help, he was a great hunter, and that is why people say, "May the Lord make you as great a hunter as Nimrod." At first, his kingdom included Babylon, Iraq and Akkad, all 3 of them in Babylonia. From that land he went to Assyria and built the cities of Nineveh, Rehoboth, Kalel and Resen, which is between Nineveh and the great city of Calah. The descendants of Egypt were the people of Lydia, Anam, Lahab, Naphtali, Pathrus, Cashler and of Crete, from whom the Philistines are descended. Canaan's sons, Sidon, the eldest, and Heth, were the ancestors of the people who bear their names. Canaan was also the ancestors of Jebusites and the Amorites, the Girgashites, the Hivites and the Arkites, the Sinites, the Avaradites, the Zemarites and the Hamathites. The different tribes of the Canaanites spread out until the Canaanite borders reached from Sidon southwards to Gerar near Gaza, and eastwards to Sodom, Gomorrah, Admah and Zeboim near Lasha. These are the descendants of Ham, living in their different tribes and countries, each speaking its own language. Shem, the elder brother of Japheth, was the ancestor of all the Hebrews. Shem's son, Elam, Ashur, Aprakashad, Lud and Aram were the ancestors of the people who bear their names. The descendants of Aram were the people of Uz, Hul, Gether and Meshech. Apashad was the father of Shelah, who was the father of Eber. Eber had 2 sons. One was named Peleg, because during his time the people of the world were divided, and the other was named Joktan. The descendants of Joktan were the people of Almodad, Shiplah, Hazamareth, Zerah Hadoram, Uzal, Dikla, Obdal, Abidmael, Sheba, Ophir, Havilah, and Jebab. All of them were descended from Joktan. The land in which they lived extended from Mesha to Shephar in the eastern hill country. These are the descendants of Shem, living in their different tribes and countries, each speaking its own language. All of these people are descended of Noah, nation by nation, according to their different lines of descent. After the flood, all the nations of the earth were descended from the sons of Noah. Chapter 11. At first, the people of the whole world had only one language, and they used the same words. As they wandered about in the east, they came to a plain in Babylonia and settled there. They said to one another, "Come on, let's make bricks and bake them hard." So they had bricks to build, and with tar to hold them together, they said, "Now let's build a city with a tower that reaches the sky, so that we can make a name for ourselves and not be scattered all over the earth." Then the Lord came down to see the city and the tower which those men were building. And he said, "Now then, these are all people that speak one language. This is just the beginning of what they are going to do. Soon they will be able to do anything that they want. Let us go down and mix up their language so that they will not understand one another." So the Lord scattered them all over the earth, and they stopped building the city. The city was called Babylon, because the Lord mixed up the language of all the people, and from there he scattered them all over the earth. These are the descendants of Shem. 2 years after the flood, when Shem was 100 years old, he had a son, Arpachshad. After that he lived another 500 years and had other children. When Arpachshad was 35 years old, he had a son, Shelah. After that he lived another 403 years and had other children. When Shelah was 30 years old, he had a son, Eber. After that he lived another 403 years and had other children. When Peleg was 30 years old, he had a son, Reu. After that he lived another 209 years and had other children. When Reu was 32 years old, he had a son, Serug. After that he lived another 207 years and had other children. When Serug was 30 years old, he had a son, Nahor. After that he lived another 200 years and had other children. When Nahor was 29 years old, he had a son, Terah. After that he lived another 119 years and had other children. After Terah was 70 years old, he became the father of Abram, Nahor, and Haran. These are the descendants of Terah, who was the father of Abram, Nahor, and Haran. Haran was the father of Lot, and Haran died in his native city Ur in Babylonia, while his father was still living. Abram married Sarai, and Nahor married Milcah, the daughter of Haran, who was also the father of Ishkar. Sarai was not able to have children. Terah took his son Abram, his grandson Lot, who was the son of Haran, and his daughter-in-law Sarai, Abram's wife, and with them he left the city of Ur in Babylonia to go to the land of Canaan. They went as far as Haran and settled there. Terah died there at the age of 205. Well, you can't blame me for getting a couple of names wrong there, because it was just, there were so many names. I totally thought it was like, have you ever watched the programme Who Do You Think You Are, where they go back and track who they were? And the genealogies in the Old Testament, and there are so many where we get all the ancestors. It's just like that. The importance of heritage, the importance of knowing where you came from. And in Jewish culture, that was a big deal. It was a big deal knowing who your family were, knowing where you came from, and knowing who you belong to. This whole support system indeed came from the family and from your relatives, whoever they were. But I don't know, how much do we place on heritage today? How important is that to you, about what you pass on, about what you've inherited? I mean, we've got a totally different sort of ideas now, because most of the time when we think about heritage, you're talking about genetics, and you're going, you know, what genetic problems come down in your family? It's weird, isn't it? Because we're still in the same place, but maybe for a completely different reason. It's worth mentioning that we picked up on the nakedness passage of Noah before, and it does, we keep on picking out Canaan, which is the son of Ham, who is the one that saw Noah. And Canaan was a land of lots of conflict. It caused lots of trouble there. And so that might be one of the reasons that it's so prominent, to understand where that conflict has arisen, to see where that's come from and to track it through. And Tower of Babel, it'd be good to rewind and say, what do you remember of it before we just read it? What's that story about? It's such a famous story, it's such an iconic story, but it's not very long. Actually, most of the time I was just talking about who descended from whom. And in the text, I love in the Tower of Babel, they go, let's build a tower, let's build it to heaven, we can reach heaven. And then the very next thing that it says is, God came down to see what had happened. So they obviously hadn't really got that near. But maybe you can take some of those questions that you potentially have about that story, about what it means, and take them to a Bible study, discuss them at church, just get some other people's ideas about what's going on in that story, what's it all about, what do I think, what do you think? That's the end of this week, so you've got a couple of days off now. I hope you're enjoying it, I hope it's helping, and keep plugging away, because Genesis is a fantastic book to learn some of the history of our faith.